Welcome to Ask Ms. ERP. The topic of this video is, do you need ERP business controls? Hello everyone, Ms. ERP here. In the last video, I covered some technical controls that you should have in place. In this video, I will touch on some ERP business controls that you may want to have. But depending on your company and what industry you're in, you may need many more. My intent with this video is really just to point you in the right direction. In video number 37, that covers ERP security, I went over the concept of least privilege, which is to grant access to only what a user needs and no more. Also discussed was segregation of duties, which is to make sure that any single individual cannot do two or more activities that may present a risk to your company. The example I mentioned was that someone should not be able to enter both vendors and payments, as that could be tempting for someone to pay themselves or a friend. Along with access controls, there are likely numerous configuration and transaction controls already in your ERP application. These could come in the form of reports or alerts, and there are probably quite a few that come as standard features. It is also likely that you either have or can set up table auditing to track changes to any particularly important fields. An example of this is that you may want to monitor who is changing the security roles themselves, as there should be very few people changing security. The ability to set up or change table auditing itself needs to be limited to a very few people. And in fact, you may want to audit who changes any table audits. Always make sure that whoever is checking the table audit reports is not the same person who is able to make the changes that are being audited. Another good example of segregation of duties. In the functional area, you should limit who has access to maintain your master data. An example for finance would be your chart of accounts. If you consider that your financial results are dependent on your chart being solid, you need to ensure that the people updating it really do know what they're doing. Similarly, the ability to do any approval hierarchy maintenance needs to be extremely limited. Most transactions need to be approved, and not just anyone should be able to change who can approve what. And if possible, you should always separate who can enter a transaction from who can approve it. In other words, those that are approving should not have the ability to also enter that transaction. Journal entries and expense statements are two good examples. Payables is really the area to watch carefully, as this is your company's money going out the door. Red flags are things like bank accounts being added or changed on a supplier. In fact, any piece of data that has a bank account or a credit card number would ideally have table auditing turned on so that all changes are tracked. Of course, someone does need to review this audit trail on a regular basis to make sure that all changes are valid. This might be a better situation for an interactive alert. Try and remove manual steps wherever possible. For example, best practice for invoicing is to set up a purchase order to be able to match to when the invoice comes in. This is called a two-way match. A three-way match is even better, which is when the goods arrived, they are received, which is matched to the PO, and then the invoice is matched to the PO. If you can separate these functions and of course limit them to the right roles to be able to enter the original transactions, then you will have minimized the risk of issuing an incorrect payment. Standard payment control reports that I have seen that may come with your ERP are ones like duplicate payments, duplicate suppliers, backdated purchase orders, invoice amount exceeding average for a supplier, and one-time supplier payments, all of which could indicate that you have a situation that should be investigated. Another area of potential issue is around employee expense statements. There are always some folks who try to get a few more dollars out of their expense statements. If you don't have the right controls in place, you leave the door open for these people. Activity to watch for are things like duplicate expenses, either by the same or different employees, expenses over company guidelines such as meal limits, missing receipts, or using non-preferred suppliers. Depending on how many employees you have and how many are submitting expenses, it could be quite a big task to monitor this. Upfront training and communication on the expected processes to all staff could certainly help.
Oops, 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 oops.
If you have human resources as part of your ERP, you really do need to make sure that any roles that can view sensitive employee information, such as personal details or salaries, are limited to only those HR staff that need it to do their jobs. And just like the finance world, the same people should not be able to create or maintain employees and also manage compensation or payroll. All of these controls really do come down to the business areas taking ownership of their data and making sure that it is being protected to the best of everyone's ability. Many times, data errors are not malicious in any way, but if you can limit what people have access to do and also increase awareness about the controls in place, this will help minimize any potential issues. As with all control framework elements, your leadership needs to regularly review and approve the controls that you have in place to ensure that they are correct and accurate. Things can change over time. Sometimes a situation has to occur before a control is put in place. I would encourage you to give controls some attention in advance because it's always easier to be proactive than reactive. This concludes the Do You Need ERP Business Controls topic. There is a link on askmserp.com to email me to ask questions or suggest topics for future videos. Or you can just add comments on any YouTube video. Please subscribe to my channel. Thanks and see you on the next video.